Alright, draftphysics.com. Yeah, keep forgetting to mention that, but yes, I do have the domain name. I have to work on that. Same difference, really. Website and such. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, I have an idea I want to play with. Just looking for the flaws and the errors. I'm going to read a pyrrho comment, and because it sort of illustrates just how difficult it is to argue with the religious, in terms of what their expectation is. I'm supposed to. Well, I'll get to that part. Anyway, I thought this was a really good point in this video. This is a kind of a good argument, so I just thought I'd replay it from the last video. It's a good point.
Parabola by creating curved space, but it has nothing to do. The two things don't have anything to do with each other.
Right. The fact that there's a relationship between different ways of making a parabola, and that's all this really comes down to. There's different ways you can make one. It doesn't mean that because there's something with a slope, that the slope is caused by the same fundamental mechanism. There's no reason to connect the two things.
Inverse square is the exact same law that's created by the shadow of my hand. By moving my hand towards the camera, I'm doing exactly the same curve of curved bent space-time. This is exactly the same thing. And it should be apparent to anyone that my moving my hand has nothing to do with space-time being warped or bent or anything.
Yes. So anyway, that's a good argument. So I guess we'll read the comments and then I'll play with what I got to play with. The stuff I'm thinking, there's just so much clutter. So I just figured I'd make a video just because I can't wait to unclutter. It's going to be a little while. So anyway, here's this guy again, Nicky Tech, posted some of my comments to Pyrrho on his video, I guess, and then Pyrrho responded, so the responses are kind of funny. I'm not interested in Gary's pronouncements. Einstein is the one that proved photons were truly physical particles. Well, I basically just pointed out that bent space-time is not particle physics. So his argument to that is, well, of course it somehow is, because Einstein did particle physics before he did bent space-time physics. But clearly, space-time is not particle physics. Clearly. Anyway, there is nothing less odd about calling it force or spectral deformation causing the same thing. I don't know what spectrals. I don't know. And I absolutely reject the way Gary and you both seem to think that things being simple to understand will lead to a full answer. Well, again, it's not about them being simple. It's about them being consistent. You have this right in front of your face. And you have it working for electricity and magnetism and gravity. And and you have it for this. Right here. This. This also. The same relationship, and it's basically just has to do with point particle, my hand from a point perspective, and straight lines. Straight lines will produce that, indicating gravity is probably a straight line force, like the other ones that we know to be fundamentally straight line forces, especially this light one. I mean, gee, couldn't get more obvious. But it has nothing to do with this idea that we're looking for simple or, we need some sort of rock and paper and scissor kind of solution. It just has to do with the fact that the very concept of bent space is essentially a leprechaun, and it's impossible to even conceive of in 3 dimensions. So I'm just saying that the very fact that you just say, well, where does the energy come from? It just pulls the stuff magically. Magic doesn't seem like a great explanation for a physicist. They should do a little better than it just magically does. Yeah, we want something better than magic. Understanding that the Earth is a sphere is not simple. Well, this is another pile of crap, like this has something to do with anything, which it doesn't. I mean, it really doesn't have anything to do with any of this argument, understanding Earth to be a sphere. It means that if you go straight long enough, you'll come up behind the point of origin. Humans had to expand their understanding of their environment, make it seem common sense. I'm just saying, I don't think it took much expansion, frankly. Round sun in the sky, round moon, round oranges. No, not very complicated. Sorry, no sale. Your current common sense is not going to make sense of particle physics. Well, you're not talking particle physics because your brain did not evolve intuitions about these long time invisible interactions. It still doesn't make any... Look, I don't have any leprechaun intuitions either, so you're going to defend leprechauns by saying, well, my brain just didn't evolve to believe in fantasy characters. Yeah, and my brain didn't evolve to believe in made-up, contrived mush. And since the curvature was confirmed, or at least perfectly equivalent results using photons, I don't know what that means. And since the curvature was confirmed, or at least perfectly equivalent result using photons, I think it's purely clear curvature is related to photons. I don't know what, just can, oh, well, here we go. Yeah, this is my parabola thing I just showed. And that's his response to that. And since curvature was confirmed, or at least perfectly equivalent result using photons, I think it's perfectly clear curvature is related to photons. No, the straight line is the point. It's a flat universe, straight lines. No, it's not. It's an unimpressive response because you think what you like, but you can't make it compelling to me, just appealing to common sense. So I guess this is, no, it's not, was his response. And then, yeah, I don't know what that means. Again, it just keeps saying that we're appealing to common sense. We're appealing to rational explanations. I'm sorry. Again, I'm just going to say, the Occam's razor is sort of a test. The idea is if you have a simple answer, why are you using this leprechaun one? So you have a choice. You can have a working particle gravity, or you have the choice of bent space-time with an infinite convergence, and all the energy is in some other dimension. That doesn't make any sense, right? Yes, of course it shouldn't. It doesn't really matter whether you conceive of space-time as actually, or somehow qualitatively curved, or whether you merely use Einstein's formula for general relativity to make accurate physical predictions with, and then consider the idea of curved space as merely an illusion. Again, you don't need Einstein. All Einstein's doing is taking Newton's equations and reformulating them. There's nothing magic in Einstein. He's just making it a moving model. And what else can you say about it? It's the same principles. I mean, it's let's see how to say it. There's no space-time factor. There's no space factor. There's the real things that happen in our real world. Velocity, acceleration, distance, time. Those real things are all in the equations. There is no space-time thingy. So again, you keep talking as if these equations have something different in them than the regular things that all the other equations have in them, which is mass, distance, time, acceleration, velocity. A way to think about it, it doesn't matter because there is no way to falsify or verify whether space is qualitatively curved or not. Yes, there's no way to falsify leprechauns except that they're totally unnecessary and there's no real evidence they exist. So the absence of evidence of their existence, the lack of any need for them to exist, the nothing that has to be done by them, no real world effect that has to be curved space. Again, if most of it can be explained with Newton, and just take Newton that step further in terms of recognizing that you can do a little bit deeper math and get to a little more accurate answer. Sure, you can say, well, it doesn't look curved when I look. Well, that's not. Who's saying that? Who's saying anything like that? Well, it doesn't look curved when I look 10 meters. Who's saying that? Nobody. or so, but that's not just a nonsensical way to think about it. What matters is merely whether the mathematical formulas of Einstein's theory make accurate predictions about what is measured or not. Well, again, you're saying the mathematical formulas are Einstein's theory of bent space. There is no bent space in his mathematical formula. So until you show me bent space in the mathematical formula, where bent space just doesn't represent, he isn't just representing the inverse square rule, this, as bent space. This doesn't have to be represented as bent space. So I have no obligation to do this and call it bent space. Alright. And they do. Well, again, the fact that they do has nothing to do with any necessity to bend space. All you have to do is inverse square velocities and accelerations. That's how modern physics, well, whatever, since Galileo and Newton, well, again, most modern physics is Galileo and Newton, works. It doesn't work without maths anymore. Well, again, says you, they land on the moon without Einstein's equations. They really did. So all this philosophizing about physics is completely useless. So again, you're saying we're philosophizing. I'm saying you're religiousizing physics. You're saying these are unassailable, established facts that we will not allow you in any way to doubt, even though we have thin, if not completely vacuous evidence to defend these premises. I'll get into the speed of light thing too in the lensing, because that one is just so simple and it's just so non-proven. I mean, unless it enables you to come up with mathematical formulas that can be used to make predictions about measurements. Well, again, I can say a ton of your predictions are crappy. Most of these formulas are not really intended even by people like Einstein to be perfectly accurate. They're supposed to be approximations. You don't even understand. That's sort of the nature of calculus in its function, is to basically say, well, we can shave off a few here and shave off a few there. And if we don't get too fanatic about collecting an infinite amount of information, we can come close enough. So you don't even understand what the mathematics is, which is just an approximation. And frankly, Newton did most of his with actual geometry because, yeah, most people didn't know math anyway, so it's just easier to do the geometry. And I'm frankly believing it's probably easier to answer any question you're going to answer using Einstein's field equations. It's probably going to be easier to draw a picture of it and measure it yourself than to do the damn equations. I bet you. Eminem can make as many videos as he wants. Whatever. Yeah, I tend to. As long as he doesn't come up with a better formula than Einstein's, it's useless. So again, I'm supposed to change the inverse square rule. I'm supposed to come up with a better formula than inverse square. I mean, it's not only a law, it's a fact. It's about as unassailable a thing as you could possibly come up with. And it's perfectly consistent and validates my theory. And yet I'm supposed to do something better with it. So better math is all you're looking for. You're not looking for any kind of theory of function that's better. So nobody can improve the theory of function. You're only allowed to improve the math. That's your fucking rule of physics. Well, it's an idiotic rule. It just proves you to be a douchebag and an asshole. So yeah, bravo for that. What a pile of crap that is. Absolute crap. Okay, so on to the lensing thing. So I'm watching some Susskind. I don't really like that guy too much, to tell you the truth, the Stanford guy. I mean, I don't like the way he teaches. I probably don't like him as a person either, but regardless. But yeah, he never does he never puts real numbers in, really does an equation. Fucking makes mistakes all over the fucking place, just pointing out how convoluted all this is, because he's always, oh yeah, it's supposed to be squared there, isn't it? Oh yeah, well, it doesn't matter. 2, oh whatever, yeah, okay, it's twice as much, whatever. I mean, he doesn't take any of it very seriously. But anyway, but obviously there's value in hearing it said by different people in different ways, whether it's Gauss's law or theorem, or these different things, but anyway, but yeah, to tell you the truth, I get the least value out of his. But anyway, so he was doing the lensing thing just as an aside, because somebody asked a question, and you know, why Einstein did this, and it was because of this equivalency principle. And so Einstein's argument was, you know, all acceleration is the same, blah, blah, blah. And it's and Susskind clearly points out that, well, no, fundamentally that's wrong, because, you know, gravity on the Earth has these tidal forces, and the tidal forces mean that it's really not the same as free falling in space. There is a difference. The gravity at the head is stronger than the gravity at your feet, and you're getting slightly compressed. And in the right circumstance, you're going to notice those things. If you have the capacity to sense them, you can sense them. They're variables that are there to be found. So it's not like it's impossible to tell the difference. It would be possible to tell the difference. So this idea of equivalence is sort of bullshit, okay? Gravity isn't exactly the same as getting pushed in a rocket or some other force that gives you acceleration. The acceleration of gravity is a little bit different because it is coming from a point. Okay, and that is different. Most acceleration you're going to acquire, you won't acquire from a point in the center of the sun, or the point in the center of the Earth, or like that. You're going to receive acceleration in some sort of broader, through some broader mechanism. Anyway, force contact. It's not going to be that pure. So anyway, so the thing with the light is that, so Einstein wanted to make it so this was some sort of universal thing that was just absolutely true about everything in the universe, and so he decided to include light. Now, even though light doesn't make gravity, you know, things that are affected by gravity are things that have gravity. So if you're going to say that light can be affected by gravity, in a sense you have to say that light can produce gravity. That if I could put enough light in a spot somewhere, that it would actually have some sort of gravity, which I think you can logically deduce doesn't make any sense. Alright, so the real problem with this lensing argument, in terms of what Einstein is doing, so the basic truth of gravity is that your mass is irrelevant, right? The gravity you're in doesn't care how much you weigh. So the gravity the Earth is producing, it doesn't care how much I weigh. I can be one atom, I can be one proton, or I can be, you know, a sun. And as far as the Earth is concerned, it's still just going to be 10 meters per second per second. Now the sun might be producing its own gravity, shoving the Earth into the sun, so let's not get that confused. I can produce gravity but obviously my influence on the Earth and a proton's influence on the Earth aren't going to be of enough difference to be worth even talking about compared to the size of the Earth. We're both billions of times smaller, so we're both irrelevant in terms of our gravity causing any added acceleration. So Einstein basically just said, well, since math gets crossed out of the equation, basically what happens is that there's an equation and the masses just cancel out on both sides of the equation, and mass becomes irrelevant. The only mass that matters is the mass of the thing, the force you're in being affected by. Your mass is irrelevant. So therefore he just decided to take a photon, since mass is out of the equation and the only thing that really is going to matter is your velocity, and say we'll just use light, and we'll put light in the gravity of the sun, and we'll figure out anything is inevitably going to be deflected some by gravity no matter what, and all it really matters is how fast it's going. Now theoretically I would argue that it would be impossible for anything really massive to go anywhere near the speed of light, but apparently Einstein thought otherwise. I don't know if he really did, but whatever. The trick is that there's really just two velocities that are happening if you're going to ever bend something's position. So when the Earth gets bent towards the sun, it's really traveling two velocities. It's got its original velocity this way, and it's traveling another velocity this way towards the Earth. So if the Earth is here, well, I could draw it. Well, I mean, it's just no. Well, yeah, I'll draw something later, so might as well make the paper dirty. Okay, so if you're going around the Earth, you know, what you're really doing is going this way, and then you're going this way, and then you end up at some other point. So this line is this line would be where you would end up in a certain amount of time, and where you end up in a certain amount of time is over here, and this line is longer than this line. So you travel more distance, which means you actually have more velocity. And light would end up doing the same thing. So something already moving the speed of light, essentially you're going to have to force the light to move more, because now it's going to have to get bent. So it's going to have to move this distance down. So it'd still be doing this distance, but it's going to be doing this distance down. And that's where this thing sort of falls apart. Is light can't do those two distances and end up in some bent place, which is a longer line. The curve is a longer line. So theoretically, people who are arguing that light is being bent are essentially saying that light goes faster than the speed of light, because it kind of has to travel that longer path. I don't think there's any rational, you can't use frames of reference to escape the fact that it's a longer path. It will travel a longer path in the same amount of time, which means it must be going faster than the speed of light. So that'd be the first reason I would say, well, there's lots of reasons to say it's not appropriate to put light in the same category as protons, electrons, atoms, and bowling balls. Light has nothing in common with any of those things. Absolutely nothing. Really. Those things are made of stuff orbiting, and light isn't. Light just doesn't have anything. I mean, we all see the fact that light doesn't have anything in common with these things, so I don't know why people think they should have something in common with them. And there's certainly no reason to think they're going to be affected the way matter is affected by gravity. So anyway, there's lots of other reasons, I think, to not find it reasonable to think that light can be bent. But, you know, certainly by my theory, there's no reason to think it could be because of the frequency thing. Certainly you could bend the constituent, the quanta of the light would be moving, but you can't change the frequency. The frequency would always be, because it's all the masses in one direction. You can't make the mass in some other direction. It can only go one way, because it's already going entirely in one direction. It has no other dimensions. Light has one dimension, the dimension it's traveling in. It doesn't have dimensionality in the other two dimensions. It's 100% mass in one direction, where matter is mass in 3 dimensions. Alright, movement in 3 directions. Alright, so the thing I've been playing with is the bent space thing and the gravity thing, in the sense of alright, so theoretically, let's say we had a big giant, oh dear, that was not a good drawing. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. Alright, so if you make something hollow, a shell, how to put it? You know, let's say you take an M&M, you know, and you drill a little tiny hole in it, and you spill all the chocolate out. You know, you melt it and it all drips out. You got this empty shell. So you make a shell. Theoretically, now even just a ring. So let's just say this is a ring of indeterminate height. You know, we'll go into how deep it goes. But the point would be is that I could put a big giant ring around the universe, let's say. A big thick wall. Let's say it's like 1,000,000 suns thick, and it's like 1,000,000 suns high. So it's a big hunk of wall. All right, 1,000,000 suns wide, 1,000,000 suns high. It's not to scale. But anyway, and I sunk that around the entire universe by the bent space theory, and by even mine, but for different reasons, obviously. There's no gravity. You couldn't like walk on the side of this thing and go, hey, I'm on gravity, right? So you would actually be able to go up against this thing. Like, say if there was one as heavy as the Earth and just a ring, a big cement ring in space, and let's say it had an atmosphere. You could walk on the outside of it, okay, because it would have gravity on the outside. No gravity on the inside. You couldn't stick to it. You'd just float around in here. Nothing. Absolutely no gravity. Even when you're right up next to it, you could be rubbing it, and you're still not going to stick to it. And this happens with electric charge. And the interesting thing is, though, is with the charge is that it really just has to do with there's no conduit for the electricity. So the electricity always needs a way to, you know, they do these experiments with these things that create this big high voltage, whatever they're called. I can't remember the name of them, but these little sparky machines, you know, and you got 1,000,000 volts here. And but the thing is, you know, and it reaches out, you know, the electricity reaches out, and you could put like a fluorescent tube in here, and it would light up if it's in line with the thing. Because what's really happening is this charge is going through the atmosphere and getting to the ground. It's getting to the ground. But the trick is inside here, it can't get to the, say this is all positive. Let's say it's a positive one. It could be negative, but let's just say it's positive on the outside. Well, that means it's negative on the inside. But the trick is there's no pathway for it to get to this charge. So there's no way for it to leak. You know, so it can't create. You won't notice the charge. It's there, but you can't find it because it doesn't have a pathway. Without a pathway, you can't see it. You can't do anything. It doesn't have a charge. Only has meaning as it's moving, where magnetism means something when it doesn't have to be moving. But that's how the two are connected. One is the motion, and the other one is the consequence of the motion. They're inverted to each other. But anyway, I don't want to get into that. I wanted to stay with this gravity thing. But anyway, so this is another reason why this thing is connected. You know, another reason why. So see if I took a sphere. So let's say this is a closed sphere, and there was charge. See, I could stick something in here to try to make it charge, and it won't charge. But in theory, it would. Like say if I had an opening here, because right here there would be lots of charge going out the opening. It just won't reach into here, and so you could sense the charge if you tried looking for it there, you could find it. But anyway, so the point would be is that what's really happening in the bent space model, okay, is that my cement ring, and I'll just put the edges, the walls of it here, so you can still see it. The cement ring is basically, you know, goes around here. You know, it has this circumference, and it's basically just sinking the bent space, okay? But it's flattened at the bottom, so the bottom of it is flat bent space. It doesn't try to pop back up. So it's bent the space down here, and this bent space is way below this space. So here's space up here, and this space is way down. 1,000,000 suns down is this flat space. And that flat space doesn't have any gravity in it. It's flat. So the bottom is flat. So no matter what I put on the rubber thing, you know what I mean, it'll stay flat. So space-time doesn't try to bounce back up. It doesn't try to come back through. And that's sort of nonsensical in a way, but they're still at different relative states. So, but by their theory, you could just keep bending space again and bending space again. So it doesn't matter how big the cement walls are I create, I can make them as deep as I want to, and the pretense is there's this unlimited amount of bent space. Now, by my theory, obviously there's force coming through these walls. I mean, coming at this thing, and the real game is that when you're inside here, the gravity is equalized. It's not that the gravity doesn't exist, it's that it's equal. Again, so the point would be is that you only feel the force when there's an imbalance in the force. So the ring, by my theory, is still causing the imbalance. I mean, it's still affecting gravity, so it's still blocking arrows like it normally would if it was a planet or anything else. That's why you stick to the outside. But on what's happening on the inside is that it's perfectly balanced. See, on the outside you have this obvious imbalance, but on the inside you have this circumstance where only this little bit is relevant to your gravity. So only this little bit is pushing you down, and this huge amount here, okay, from here to here, all of this, even though it's further away, is pulling you up. And so the part pulling you up, this giant bit, all this, okay, sorry about, I should show this diagram the right way, but it doesn't really, it's not that critical. I mean, it's sort of critical, but I guess the description is more important. So that's the real game, is the little bit that's under you, that's pulling you down, and there's this much bigger part pulling you up. And even though this is further away, it's so much more massive that it balances the force down. So the two equalize. So you really are in gravity. It's just that it's perfectly balanced. But the real trick is that if you made these walls thick enough, if I keep making them thicker by my, unlike bent space, there's not an infinite supply of gravity pressure. So if I make the walls thick enough, there gets to a point where there isn't any gravity in here for realsies, and all the atoms just fly apart because nothing's held together anymore. There's no more magnetism, no more electricity, no more any other force, because all the forces are made out of these particles being able to get to the interior of your matter. The particles are what makes this happen. It's like this, in terms of electric flow, you could even say, through wires and different things. What's really happening is the polarization goes in through it one way, and the force, the gravity, and then it creates polarization when it's the right circumstance, which creates the tangential polarization, and then it goes to that tangent to get into here. So the two things it's essentially a translation of force, and you translate gravity into magnetism on the interior through the electricity in the wire going to tangent. So the I wanted to say that a better way, but that's really how it's working. Is that the polarization causes the stream to change. So the stream is always existing. So if I take like a coil, like a solenoid, and has these the field lines would be going in here, and there would be a flow of magnetic charge, magnetism, say, going whatever direction the current's going. So if I change the current, it goes opposite directions. But the flow is basically in a direction. And all that really represents, though, is that these wires are polarizing stuff that was already moving through here. So it's just polarizing the gravity, which is essentially causes the magnetizing, the gravity, that polarization thing. So now if I put something in there that's capable of being magnetized, like a steel rod, it will move in and out based on which way the electricity is going. All right. Pretty much. All right, what else do I have to say? That's probably enough. I don't want to get too, but it's just this might be a thing where I can get bent space. Maybe is on this idea of the giant cement ring. Where you get the idea that how that really just doesn't make much sense, that you could have that with your bent space thing. I could create a giant cement earth ring, and that you wouldn't be able to walk on the inside of it. Your bent space fails to give you gravity, and I don't know if it has a good reason for that. I don't know if you can create a bent space explanation for that makes any sense. Yeah, I think. Yeah, just because bent space sort of is supposed to have tension. That's the whole idea. The slope is the tension. It wouldn't have the inverse square rule without some sort of tension. So if there's tension, it should be bulging up in the center. If I make a big ring, space-time should try to come back up the middle, and it doesn't. Alright. Yeah, there's just so much room for picking at this stuff. And the other thing I still want to play with, is, I got to talk to a real physicist or something. Is I'm still thinking about the orbiting thing. It's just so fascinating. As I started thinking about whether there was a way to reverse, like the Earth, like getting something in Earth's orbit. How would I do that from the Earth? Okay, from the Earth I can't really do it, because no matter what I do, I have to launch it or throw it, or I have to do some kind of force thing to get it in this condition and then try to make it backwards out of the universe. Like, I'm just trying to come up with some way that you can actually get into an orbit from outside the gravity. So again, I'm just back at this problem where theoretically, say if this was the sun and this is the Earth's orbit, there's no way to throw something from out here and get it in that orbit. You just can't do it. It's going to go in and pop right back out again. So there's no way to get anything unless I place it in this orbit with the proper velocity. I can't get the proper velocity to come in this way and actually catch the right orbit, because it's inevitably going to have the wrong velocity when it gets to this point. Like, there's no place here where I can come in at some velocity where I'm not going to get pulled too much here, or I'm going to go too straight here. I can never hit that point from the external world. I don't think there's any way that you can do it. I don't think there's any velocity you can have from the outside of the solar system where you could throw it at the right speed and have it stay in that orbit. It's always going to either go out or it's going to crash into the sun, but it won't do the orbiting thing. So I guess what I'm saying theoretically is there's no way to throw something into a gravity well and have it do an orbit unless it hits something on the way out. And I think that's, nobody ever said that when I was a kid, but I think it's true. There's no way to create an orbit unless you effect something on its way out. You have to create the imbalance. Without the imbalance, it just goes in and pops back out. Whatever velocity you put it in with, it's going to fly out with. And if you give it too little velocity, if you head it too towards the sun, which would be too little velocity, I mean, you can't give it too little velocity, obviously. You can't give it negative velocity. But if you point it at the sun, yeah, it'll crash right into the sun. But there's no other way to vector it to get it in a position where it won't just go down the well and pop back out again. You have to interfere with it somehow, either going in or going out. But you have to interfere with it. It can't in some natural way find an orbit. I guess is what I'm trying to say. I think that's true. I'm not certain, but I think it is. And I think that's damn interesting. So anyway, enough said. I won't beat it to death. So I'm working on stuff. So I was hoping to have more stuff. I want to try to do a little more rewriting or something maybe. I'm having trouble getting anything reviewed. They just reject stuff without reviewing it. And that's just what can you can't argue with. We don't even want to bother. So that's just really annoying. So I'm back to thinking maybe I will see if I can pay a real physicist to either review it or promote it. Do one or the other. Either publish it under his name or point out how it's nonsense. So anyway, until the next time. But I can just see how they're going to all want to not get involved because they got reputations to protect and all that kind of stuff. So I can just see how this is going to be another nightmare. Well, anyway, I got to do what I got to do, right? So this is what I got to do, so I'll do it. But obviously I'm not going to get any rational arguments from the whatever peanut gallery, so to speak. So anyway, till next time.